My name is Carol. I'm 65 years old now, and I've been called a lot in this life. Warrior mother, me. Strong widow, Donna Carol from the bakery. But of all the things I've been told, none hurt as much as the silence, because sometimes it's not the screaming that hurts, it's being ignored by the one you gave it all to. Have you ever been erased from your own history? Have you ever felt like an old piece of furniture in the house you built yourself? That's that. I lived it for 5 years. I was diminished within my own home. While I smiled and served dinner, my daughter-in-law humiliated me. My son closed his eyes, and I was silent. But I didn't go blind. If you've ever suspected that they're trying to get you out of the way with fake politeness and icy smiles, you'll understand every line of this story, because what I'm going to tell you here is not just mine. It's every woman who gave too much and, in the end, Mayon was treated as if she was worthless. At the end of this video, you'll see how 2 simple words, good luck, can dismantle years of manipulation. Because I kept quiet, but when I said, no one was prepared for what was to come. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Everything that happened was real. It's not an exaggeration, nor a soap opera. I was in my own kitchen, making tea, when I saw the picture. Niece, my daughter-in-law, my son, and her mother sitting on the couch in my living room, smiling, with the caption, "The family that really matters." I was not tagged, not even mentioned. At that moment, I understood that I was no longer part of what I myself helped to build. And you know what I did? I commented only 2 words, good luck. An hour later, my son entered the house, screaming, pale, trembling, wild, wound. The lawyer had called, the bank, too. But for you to understand how everything got to this point, I need to go back there. Back there on the day when an elegant and cold girl crossed my door for the first time, with perfect makeup and a poison hidden in her smile. If you have been through something similar, if you have ever been silenced in your own home, I invite you to stay here with me. Listen to me. Press the like button. Subscribe. Leave this video stored with you. Telling this is not easy. But when we talk, other women feel less alone. And today, I need your company. It was on a Sunday in March that everything began to change. The sun was weak. The wind was lazily rolling through the kitchen curtains, and I had spent all morning preparing my beef and potato stew, the one Ethan had always ordered since he was a boy. When he came home from school, hungry, and his eyes were still red from rubbing in the cold, I washed the vegetables calmly, organized the table with care, and tea. Even put the crochet tablecloth that my mother left me. All done with love. I didn't expect luxury, just presence, just respect. Ethan arrived with a small bouquet, 3 sunflowers, my favorite flower, and I smiled. But Behind him came she, Ashley, and Anna, alone, Montisilkan, was septon, tall, wine tile, elegant, long, with a dress too tight for Sunday lunch, heels that barely touched the floor, and a perfume that stayed in the house longer than her. She greeted me with her outstretched hand, cold, too firm, knee, and a smile that did not reach her eyes. When he let go of my hand, I had the strange feeling that something inside me had shrunk. In the living room, wow, how it seemed to be. She looked at everything with that way of someone who evaluates, not someone who appreciates. He commented from the shelf. When? Wow, it looks like a museum thing. He looked at my paintings and said, "How I love modern art. You know, these old things give me agony." At lunch, he praised the seasoning, but with a tone that hurt. Very simple. No tata nice. Have to that. Right? Like grandma's food. It has its charm. No. Ethan laughed nervously. Hey. He tried to change the subject. I pretended not to care. But inside, jag born kapnischte discoen. Something was starting to crack. It was on that day that I felt, for the first time, that my home was no longer mine alone. It was as if a strange presence had slowly invaded, smiling, and started pulling on the furniture without moving a finger. Ashley spoke loudly, interrupted Ethan, cut me off in the middle of sentences. When I talked about when his father renovated that house with his own hands, she said, "Why? Oh, so this house is really good. Dated, right?" Stopped. Nee. No night is on. I held the serving spoon tight. I didn't answer. No. But the taste of the stew was different in the mouth. For dessert, she refused my pudding. He said he was on a diet, and then whispered something in Effen's ear. Who let out a muffled laugh. I pretended I didn't see it. I always pretended. Oh. After they left, I washed the dishes slowly, one dish at a time, wondering who was that woman that my son brought into our history. It was not just a matter of taste or generation. It was the way she crossed me as if I were invisible. And Ethan didn't seem to notice anything. That night, I went to bed early, but I didn't sleep. I stood there, no, eyes open, listening to the sounds of the house that was once full of voices and was now as mute as my chest. That Sunday was the first thread pulled from a ball that would unravel too quickly. And maybe you, who are listening to me now, have also felt this. That intuition that doesn't scream, but whispers, and we pretend we didn't hear. A sense that something is being taken away from us, not all at once, but little by little, with sweet words and sharp gestures. Tell me, have you ever felt it? Have you ever been in a place that was yours, and suddenly everything started to change as if you were a nuisance? If you've experienced something similar, comment here with an "I believe" or a "I've lived it." It will do me good to know that I am not the only one. But that was just the beginning. The following week, She returned, solemn, and this time, it brought more than sharp words. He brought ideas, suggestions, changes, and the saddest thing, it brought Ethan further and further away from the boy I raised. You know how that is, right? When the sun changes his look, and we feel that we have lost something that no one else sees. But had I really lost it? Or was it just the beginning of a silent war? You will understand. Mine is open to, and the worst was yet to come. Sundays have become a strange ritual. I woke up early, as I always did, prepared the table with fresh flowers from the backyard, and moped the house with more care than usual. Deep down, I knew Ashley was coming, and even though I knew what awaited me, I insisted on maintaining good manners, as if my kindness was enough to break her coldness. But each week was a new wound. Ashley entered as if it were a courtesy visit, but walked around the house as if she were a mistress. He started to open my cabinets without asking, changed the position of the cutlery in the drawer, moved the picture frames, all with justifications disguised as concern. Ah, Carol, I'm going to put this photo of Ethan more central. It looks more beautiful. These dark pieces of furniture make you old. This song is very sad. Let me put on a more upbeat playlist. And me? I just smiled, pretended to agree. But inside, I felt her every touch as if they were hands pushing my story out of the house. The last straw was when she asked, in the middle of lunch, why, if I had ever thought about painting the walls with more neutral colors. That color is depressing. You know, have you ever thought of something like beige or off-white? I held the fork tightly, but he said nothing. I never said, Nadia, Ethan, next to her, Wyodan, and Patsy Diwab, and Timnestige, let out that muffled laugh, as if trying to avoid confrontation. When the food cooled on my plate, I realized that it wasn't just the wall she wanted to repaint. It was my presence that she wanted to erase. On another Sunday, you are still so tradium. I don't need or start underneath you. Ashley brought a set of anti-aging creams as a gift. He said, no, in front of Ethan. Model, Adel consult to Gakar, I'm Shabindi. It's good to be safe, isn't it, Carol? The skin gets tired. Now brought you down. But this here disguises the marks of time. Well, her laugh, one light, disguised the poison. Ethan, blind, nice, replied, Ashley is so careful, isn't she? Well, this is not town. Mom, careful? That word echoed in my head the rest of the afternoon. No, because no one there saw what she was doing. Just me. And it was like screaming underwater. Now, she used to say phrases like, there are things that Carol's generation doesn't understand. Or there are times when we need to learn to withdraw. Right? He spoke looking at the plate. No, but it was to me that he spoke. It was always for me. And Ethan thought everything was normal. She said it was her way. that I needed to adapt to today's times. Adapt. Me, who had spent my whole life taking care of everything, that she had raised that boy alone, with her hands calloused from making bread and her heart full of stories that no one asked any more. Was I the one who had to adapt? And as if the words weren't enough, she started to change things in the house. He changed the frames in the hallway. Oh, he said that the old paintings were very heavy. He replaced my ambient music with a playlist of it on Spotify. She reorganized the pantry because, according to her, the layout was confused. The house began to stop being mine. Room by room, and soon, object by object, and every time I entered, now locale, I felt that it was a visit in my own life. But I didn't react. Not yet. I watched, kept. Every woman who is over 60 knows when we no longer have the strength of youth, we have the power of time. And time has taught me not to explode. He taught me to listen first and to act only afterwards. But deep down, I already knew. She didn't just want Ethan. She wanted it all. All that remained was to decide where he would start. And, without me realizing it, she was already choosing. And when he finally showed the cards, what she asked for was much more than a new decoration. You won't believe what she had the courage to propose to me. I remember it like it was yesterday, the day they said they were getting married. Well, Ethan arrived with that twinkle in his eye, the same one he had when he got his first bike. He spoke of the alliance, the request, the plans for the future, and I smiled. Of course I did, because a mother, even with a heavy heart, wants to see her child happy. But inside me, a part of me already knew. This wedding was not just a celebration of love. It was the beginning of an invisible separation. In the months that followed, Ashley took the reins of everything. She planned every detail with her own mother and some friends, as if they were the commission of an exclusive event, where I was just an extra. When I went to ask about the dress, I heard, "Mom, we went to see it yesterday. Mom, Carol." It was all so rushed. But then, we'll show you pictures. Okay? And he smiled. That sweet, lying smile she always wore when she wanted to exclude me without seeming cruel. On the visit to the salon, Nadi, I arrived on my own. I had heard Ethan comment over the top and went, thinking I was still part of it. Now, when Ashley saw me, she widened her eyes and said, "Way," feigning surprise. "Wow, I didn't know Ethan had called you." "Okay, just try not to get in the way." "Okay." I just nodded. I sat in a corner and watched as she gave orders, pointed out seats, even decided how many floral arrangements they would have on each table. It was like watching the construction of a party that would celebrate something that did not include me. On the day of the wedding, I went alone to the church. I wore a navy blue dress that I had sewn myself months before, hoping that it would somehow feel beautiful. When I arrived, no one received me. Ashley's mother paraded in a long beige dress, surrounded by people. When I saw the arrangement of the tables. My name was on a small label, on a chair in the back row, next to two distant uncles of the groom who barely knew Ethan. I sat there and took a deep breath. I didn't cry. I'm not the type to make a fuss. Wow. I'm the cat still. Only a touchy no grace. But inside, well, inside I bled. During the ceremony, no one looked at me. Ashley walked down the aisle in a luxurious dress and a victory look. Ethan seemed happy or deluded, perhaps, and I was there in the last row now, hoping not to undo my makeup that I did alone in the bathroom at home. At the party, the photographer passed by, clicking everything. When she got close to me, Ashley said, "No, it had come," without whispering. "Oh, these photos are now just with the family, okay?" And the photographer got the message. I was cut off from almost all of them. I stood by the candy table, holding a glass of cheap bubbly and pretending to be distracted. But I saw everything. I saw my absence being built, click by click. The exclusion was not with shouting. It was with choices, with smiles, with silent priorities. And that's when I understood. Wow. She didn't just want to get me out of the house. I wanted to take myself out of history. Because when a woman doesn't appear in the records, it seems that she never existed. And that's what hurts the most. I returned home before the cake was cut. I walked down the street, holding my shoe in my hand. When I entered, wow, dear dear, send a cut count. I sat in the kitchen chair, looked at the empty table. Wow, old sat and look on, and whispered to myself, "At least here I'm still seen." But little did I know that her next attack would not be against my memory. It would be against something much more concrete, something that took me a lifetime to build, and that she would try to take it as if it were her own from the beginning. Wow. A few months after the wedding, I thought where you. Ethan showed up here at home with that look he wore when he was a boy, and wanted to ask for something that he knew I might not let him. She sat with me in the kitchen. Drank my coffee, complimented my cake, and then came up with a conversation. Mom, we found a beautiful house, but it needs a push to come in. It's not much, only 30,000. 30,000. It was exactly the amount I had been saving for years, in an emergency fund. Money that came from sacrifice. From the winter, when I sold bread on the sidewalk wrapped in a blanket. From the summer, when I worked with my knee hurting, but without missing a day. I hesitated. No. My heart tightened. Only so that he didn't us. But he was my son, and a mother. Little God so proud. But the use. A mother always wants to help. I signed the check with a shaking hand. Ashley, at the time, gave a wide smile and said, "You can let us give you everything back, penny for penny." She said it so lightly that it seemed as if 30,000 was bakery change. A few weeks later, they showed me pictures of the new house. Whoa, large, modern, wow, with furniture that looked like it came out of a magazine. But when I went to visit Miokan, I soon realized that that house had no room for me. The decor was all minimalist. Now, there wasn't even a photo of our family. Not a single memory of where Ethan came from. Everything was new, imported, wow, too modern for the old thing. Ashley greeted me with a forced hug and immediately warned, "Take off your shoes before you go in." Carol, Lynn, how about not a. The floor is French oak. I entered barefoot. No, feeling that it was no longer home. It was a showcase. In the second room, Bob. She pointed to the white sofa and said, "Oh, don't sit there, Carol. This sofa is Italian. Easy stain." I stood, sitting, down, and I sonata was there, le secoba. Only, after she herself pointed to a smaller chair in the corner. During the tea, he talked about the architect, the natural lighting, these, the pieces coming from New York. I listened to everything in silence, but inside me, something was beginning to change. I realized that the money that came out of my account was there. In every expensive object, on each linen pillow, high, in every laugh of contempt. And I realized something else. She didn't want me to be there, only my pocket. After that, every time I tried to visit, Ashley found a reason to put it off. "This week is going to be busy. Carol, we have visitors. There is renovation upstairs." And when I insisted, Mom, she accepted, but with rules. "Try to come just for an hour, okay? And let me know beforehand." How? Because I have meetings. It was as if my presence was a favor. And Deon, Albante, Sion Sue, who helped pay for that house, had to ask permission to enter. I remember one Sunday when I arrived with a walnut bread that Ethan loved. She opened the door, smiled, looked at the bag, and said, "Carol, do you still do these things? Here, we have been trying to avoid gluten. You know, I delivered anyway. The bread was left on the countertop, untouched, and I returned home with a silence in my chest and a question in my head. When did my love become a burden? If you're listening to this, and at some point in your life you felt that they only came to you when they needed to, so we understand each other. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story with my soul exposed. If you're listening to me, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. This is not just my story. It is of many women who gave everything and then were put aside as if they were invisible. And I still have a lot to tell you. No, I still deny would okay. But this part, the loan, was just the beginning. What Ashley really wanted was yet to come. Oh, because she wasn't going to stop until she put her name where it should never be. And when that happened, I saw it all with my own eyes. I just didn't know that signing that paper, it was the same as opening the trap door. And you will understand, because I signed, and I regretted it. But not in the way you imagine. It was on a gray afternoon, one of those in which the sky seems to know what we carry inside. One that Ethan arrived here at home with a briefcase in his hand, in a very calm manner. He sat in front of me in the living room. Wow, fiddling with the papers as if rehearsing a difficult piece of news. Mom, he began, we've been talking a lot, and we thought maybe it was time to think about the future. Mom, I frowned. Leonard, let's see here, turn it around, a frown. Future? He took a deep breath. You're getting older. No. Active city guy. On the count. And if something happens, it will be a huge headache to solve inheritance. Documents. These things. Why don't you pass the properties to my name? Just to avoid bureaucracy. You know? I was speechless. I heard his voice, but what echoed in my head was, "You're getting older." That hit harder than any slap, as if I already had my foot in the grave, as if I no longer had the right to hold what I built with my own hands. I said little. I'm young. I just shook my head and said I would think about it. He gave me a hurried kiss on the forehead, left the briefcase on the table, and left. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with the light off, just listening to the sounds of the house. Each piece of furniture inside had a story. That bookshelf, the first piece of furniture I bought after his father died. The curtain in the living room, which I sewed myself on my mother's machine. The tiles, replaced on a rainy morning by a neighbor who didn't want to charge me. Everything there had been conquered with much more than money. It had been with sacrifice, in pain, now, with faith. But suddenly, it seemed that none of that mattered anymore. I was just the lady who can die at any time, and the goods needed to be facilitated. 2 days later, no. Ashley called me. No. Hi, Carol. Ethan told me that you're thinking of transferring the properties. I thought it was so beautiful of you. Well, take care of everything with care. Okay? Her voice was sweet as warm honey, but I knew the tone. It was the same as those who have already won and are just waiting for the signature. At the end of the week, I went to the registry office. I took the papers. My hands trembled. The employee explained everything with an annoying calm. Ethan was by my side the whole time, holding my bag as if he wants to show that he's taking care of me. When I signed, I felt like come out of me. Not a good, but a force. One certainty. How? It was as if I had cringed before the world, and no one there noticed. No. That same night, they had dinner in the new house. Ashley opened a bottle of French champagne. Toasted. They made stories, laughed. I was silent. In the corner, Liam. Ethan hugged me sideways and said, "Now, everything is in place, right?" I smiled without showing my teeth. I swallowed my tears, because there, deep in my stomach, something told me, I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. From then on, everything changed. Ashley walked around the house, as if she owed no more satisfaction. Ethan, little by little, stopped asking if I needed anything. When I once called to warn that the plumbing in the old house had leaked, Ashley replied for him, "Well, no to that. Oh, Carol, now it's up to Ethan, right? He solves it." And he hung up. Simple as that. The following week, I tried to make a surprise visit. I wanted to see my grandson. I knocked on the door. I knocked on the door, and Ashley opened it with a furrowed brow. "Did you tell me you were coming?" I said no. It's just a little messy today, you know. Better to leave it for another day. And he closed the door carefully, as if I were a cold wind that bothered me. I returned home empty-handed, and my heart even emptier. The house I was born in was small. In there was small. But my mother always said, where there is respect, there is no lack of space. And there, I realized more and more, there was no more room for me, nor as a mother, nor as a mother-in-law. I knew a shulkinated child, and so one, nor as a woman. I had given everything, and now everything was in their hands. They had my money, my properties, the properties, and the most dangerous. They were sure that I would not react. But they forgot one thing Ashley never understood. One, she thought that because I was silent, I was weak. But who is silent sees everything, listen to everything, and he takes notes. And what I started to write down, you won't believe it, because that's when I found out that signature wasn't the end. It was just the opening of the dirtiest game I've ever seen. And when I realized what they were doing behind it, there was no turning back. Family gatherings changed their tone. Before, dinner was made by me, with loose laughter and the smell of bread in the air. Now, it's all cold, distant, tasteless. Ashley always chose restaurants that were too fancy. Dishes with names that no one could pronounce. Glasses that were too tall for simple hands like mine. And even when dinner was at their house, it wasn't for me. I was just another seat at the table. An ornament. She spoke loudly, controlled the subject, used complicated words on purpose. He was talking about IVF clinics in California, brunch in Napa Valley. When I nodded. Ethan laughed, nodded. Ah. And when I tried to comment on something simple, I thought you were extra by, like a childhood memory of my son or an old recipe he liked, I immediately heard the cut. Nose. Ah, but this is old stuff, right, Carol? Today, everything is different. And he ignored me again. Wow. There was one time I tried to tell when I sewed Ethan's uniform, because the school got the measurement wrong. She rolled her eyes, smiled crookedly, and blurted out, "How cute." But today everything is delivery, right? We don't have time for these things anymore. The words beat dryly, but what hurt the most, it was the look. That look that said, "You don't belong here anymore." At that dinner, I kept quiet, but when I got home, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and an old notebook. I wrote the sentence, I wrote the date, and I wrote how I felt. I started doing this with everything, every little humiliation, how, every disguised contempt, every indirect message. What was once mute suffering now gained lyrics, registered. Well, now, my silence began to turn into a strategy. I wrote down what she said, how she said it, the tone of her voice, who was present. They turned into pages. Then, in folders, and even without knowing exactly why, something inside me said, "You're going to need this." Because one thing that people forget is that old women see everything. And he doesn't forget. We can be silent on the outside, but on the inside, we're writing a whole book. And if you've made it this far, it'll tell you, why, don't stop watching, because the most remarkable moment in this story is yet to come. And when it comes, you'll understand why I've waited so long. Why did I listen so much? And because it took 2 words to bring everything down. Well, and they said so. Back to dinners. Even the way he served me changed. Ashley would put the minimum amount of food on my plate and say, "You have to take care of your health, right, Carol?" When I asked about her grandson, Newell, how that, she said that they were waiting for the right moment and that they didn't want pressure from anyone, not even Ethan's. But the way she looked at me when she said nobody was, as if my name was implied there, hidden behind the poison. Oh, what tore me apart the most was not what she did. That's what Ethan let them do. He, who I carried in my arms, who slept with his head on my chest, asking me never to leave. Now, he looked at me as if asking for silence, as if to say, no, without saying. It doesn't complicate things. It was as if love had an expiration date, as if gratitude had a time limit. I began to notice the details. In the calls that stopped, on forgotten birthdays, in the invitations that did not arrive. I was called only when they needed to look like a united family outside. But inside, I had already been unplugged from the outlet. They turned me off, little by little, like someone who dims the light in a room until you can't see anything anymore. But I never stopped watching, nor to listen how. And that week, overhearing a conversation behind the door, unintentionally, I swear, I discovered something that would change everything. Ashley spoke on the phone with someone and said a phrase that chilled my spine. She doesn't even suspect it. When the time comes, everything will be in our name. No. That's when I realized my exclusion was not emotional. It was legal. It was calculated. No. And the plan was already underway. But what Ashley didn't know, it's just that I was already one step ahead. No, down. I'd find a walnut in Canada. And what I did after this discovery, no one in the family was prepared to see it. Not even Ethan, especially Ethan. Ashley appeared with a different twinkle in her eye that morning. The that was salt, a rehearsed, exaggerated joy that did not match the cold outside. I already knew that tone. Now, unjust happy. It was the same smile she wore when she took my photos off the shelf and swapped them out for decorative candles. The same smile that offered me a wrinkle cream with an air of kindness. Only this time, the poison was wrapped in a noose. She was pregnant. It's a boy, he said proudly, holding his belly not yet apparent. Ethan was on the side, half silly, half silent, as always. They hugged me. They called me Grandma. Whoa, Jinstibaya, when she told my soldiers. And for a second, I believed it. I believed that this baby could bring something back. That maybe, with the arrival of a new life, now, some part of mine would also be welcomed again. But it was short-lived. The following week, she called me to talk, drinking chamomile tea in the White Room as a hospital. She crossed her legs, looked at me with artificial delicacy, and said, "Wow, Carol, we need to start thinking about the baby's well-being. Newborns need tranquility, light energy, quiet environments." I kept quiet. She continued, now, as if giving good news. We researched some beautiful places for you. You know, senior living communities in Beaverton. With people your age, good structure, ready meals. It will be great for you. And better for the baby, too. Right? I was speechless. Ethan was not in the room. Ashley talked as if I were an old piece of furniture that was going to be exchanged for a crib. That night, I sat in the sewing chair, the same one where, years ago, I spent nights and nights adjusting Ethan's uniforms, mending pants, embroidering names. There, I cried, like I hadn't cried since his father's funeral, because there I understood that it was not just a matter of space. It was about disappearing, about erasing me from the whole story. Ethan learned of the proposal the next day. He looked me with embarrassment in the eyes. I said, "We only want the best for you." Mom, the best for me? Was kicking me out of my house the best thing for me? I stopped here for a moment because maybe you've experienced something similar. Wow, the habita. Perhaps you too have been put aside with sweet words that hide abandonment. And if you've ever felt this kind of pain, the one that comes from the one you loved the most, write a phrase here in the comments that says what was stuck in your chest. It can be a know how it is. I understand you. Or even as simple, it's true. Sometimes, seeing that someone understands us is what holds our hearts in place. But at that moment, in that chair, I decided. From then on, I didn't go anymore. He wasn't going to give me up. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to do what women like me have learned to do over time. Observe, wait, and act firmly. Because from that day on, the tables turned, and I started, without them knowing, to build my way out, or rather, around me. And what started with a silent search was going to end with a shock that neither she nor Ethan were prepared to live, because whoever thinks that an old woman is weak He has never seen what happens when she decides to get up. And the first step I took, it was the most important of all. Do you know what it was? Well, I'll tell you. Not shall cow. That night, when I returned from the dinner where I was practically invited to disappear from my own grandson's life, I went straight to the bathroom. I locked myself there with the light off, sitting on the toilet lid as if it were the last place in the house where I could still think without being observed. I took my cell phone out of my coat pocket and, with a trembling hand, looked up his name. Maotabsira, Elias Morgenstern. Yes, and a palm. One of the few men I still trusted. He must your constable for Silkwood. I never also be, I'll say. He was a customer of the bakery in the good times. A respected, discreet, old school lawyer. He had lost his wife a few years ago, and since then, sometimes he stopped by just to have coffee and talk about simple things, as if he also needed to remember that there was still kindness in the world. When she answered, her voice came low and firm, maternal, as always. Carol? Carol? I didn't cry. He only said, Elijah, I need you. They're going to take me out of my house. He was silent. How? He listened to everything. And after a few seconds that seemed like hours, he said, we can reverse this, but it will require courage. You'll have to be smart. I closed my eyes. I've been too silly. Elias, now I just have to be smart. The next day, I went to an electronics store in Hillsborough. I bought a small recorder, one of those that fits in the palm of my hand. I hid it inside my crochet bag, and I started recording. Every time I was called to their house, I took the tape recorder. Every mocking giggle, each poisonous indirect. Ashley couldn't control herself. He said things like, when she leaves, we will turn that room into a closet for me. I've even seen the dressing table I want. Another time, she commented to a friend on speakerphone, thinking I wasn't listening. Stupid old woman. He transferred everything thinking it was proof of love. You're going to leave here without even realizing it. I listened in silence, and inside, I recorded with my soul too. Every word, every humiliation, even Ethan, my boy, said things I never thought I'd hear. She's already getting confused. Now, Ash, it's better to solve this soon before it starts to work. And she replied, how? After the baby is born, we can suggest a home with accompaniment. It will seem that it is to help. Now, she will accept it, just as she accepted the rest. Each recording was a stabbing, but it was also a piece in my puzzle. I sent everything to Elias. He responded with a received, and sometimes only with the "it will work out." And that was enough for me, because for the first time, I was in charge. Amazing. Ashley didn't know it, but the tired old woman was building a dossier. And it wasn't just words. I started printing statements from the joint account. I took copies of the real estate records. I gathered receipts, emails, text messages. No, I collected everything. I turned silence into an archive, one pain in proof. In the middle of this process, there was a day when Ashley spoke too loudly. I was in their kitchen, sitting, as always, in a corner. She got a wainscot, on their phone and said, laughing, if I get divorced after all, it'll keep the house. We made Ethan put everything in his name. The mother won't even know what happened. When she hung up, she looked at me, realized that I had heard it, and gave that dry smile. It's just a joke. Carol, you know how we talk nonsense, right? I smiled back, do. But that moment, that's when I knew. She didn't just want to erase me. She planned to erase everything, even marriage itself. If it were convenient. That was no longer a matter of taste. It was a coup. And to think that I thought the baby was going to change something. But no, that was just another piece in her game. Just one more argument to get me out of the way. But she forgot that who has ever buried a husband, raised a child alone, and built a bakery from scratch. It doesn't fall that easy. And as much as it hurt me, I knew it wasn't time to react. It was time to finish digging the ground. Because before I built justice, I needed to make sure that I didn't leave any loopholes. And that's when whether not to have said city to on one of those visits, Ashley made a mistake that gave me exactly what I needed. One sentence, a confession, a recording. You can't imagine what she said. And that's why, at the next dinner, I was the one who took the surprise. From that day on, I began to wear the apron not only as kitchen protection, but as armor. I sewed a small inner pocket, invisible from the outside, where the tape recorder fitted my own too. And every time Ashley called me for a coffee, I went with it on. In the living room, as she talked about new curtains or plans for the baby's room, the sharp words escaped in disguise. Don't touch the toilet. Carol, it was very expensive. And you don't need to bring anything. No, Hannah. Here we already have everything. More modern. Do you still wear that kind of shoe? Each sentence came with honey in the voice and poison inside. And I, so we got acetone. One that comes. Just smile. But the tape recorder smiled with me. And he captured everything. I began to observe beyond words. The desks, the forgotten papers, the emails opened on the laptop that she left on the couch while she went to answer the phone. I took a picture of everything. One day, on a tray on the side table, there was a stack of papers with notes on finances. I read over and recognized the name of one of my properties. I photographed it on the spot. New Khan. Draft contracts. Receipts for the purchase of expensive furniture. Printed email messages that spoke of bank transfers. She left it there thinking that no one read. But I read it. Each line. Ethan, at that time, looked like an extra at his own wedding. I went from one room to another as if trying not to get in the way, and I realized that he didn't rule anything, not even more in itself. But even so, he was an accomplice by silence, by omission, no. And that, perhaps, no, was the wound that hurt the most. It was on a rainy afternoon that I decided to enter the garage. Ashley had left for an appointment, and Ethan was sleeping on the couch with the television sound on. Inside, there are, among decoration boxes and old tools, there was an old cabinet. How? I opened it on impulse, and there, little, among dish towels still with labels, I found the red paste. It was written miscellaneous documents. Open? Oh? My eyes went straight to the name of my property. It was a copy of a bank loan. Oh. Ethan had signed, and as a guarantee, they used the house that I had passed to his name months ago. A second mortgage. I took a deep breath. I felt my stomach revolt. But I didn't make a scandal. I put the paper back, took pictures of everything, and went back to the living room as if nothing had happened. That wasn't just a betrayal. It was a robbery. Cold, lie, calculated, mom. Smiling. That night, I sat down with Elijah and showed him everything. He read it silently. When he finished, he looked me in the eye and said, "Now we have enough. But, Carol, are you ready?" I just shook my head, because then I understood. It was not enough to recover what was mine. I needed to take everything apart. All the manipulation, the whole web of lies, all the structure she built on my memories, my effort, my home, no, neonas, cowardice, spontaneity, whatever's to stay. And I would do that without raising your voice, because sometimes the loudest cry is well-directed silence. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes all a woman like me needs is to know that someone is listening. And if you're here, thanks. You've kept me company more than a lot of people I've raised. Now, what do you think I did with all those tests? I'll tell you just one thing. At the next dinner, I was the one who chose the place at the table. And Ashley, he could barely swallow his own wine. It was a slow Sunday, with cloudy skies, and the house plunged into that silence that only happens when everything has been said, and what remains is emptiness. I was in the kitchen, making an apple cake like the old days, when I heard Ashley's voice coming from the living room. He was on the phone. I was going to tell you I was there, but something made me stop. I stood motionless behind the half-open door, and then I listened. As soon as I managed to transfer the last 2 papers to my name, I will file for divorce. My hand trembled. The sugar fell out of the bowl. Ashley continued, unaware that I heard every word. Michael is insecure. Accommodating, but it served what I needed. Michael, I shouldn't. How? She didn't even call Ethan anymore. He called him Michael, as if referring to an expired project. I leaned against the sink, slowly, then down. I sit high and reached for the pocket of my apron. The recorder was already on. The sound captured everything. I'm already talking to a broker. She would say, "No, I'm sick of this suburban life. Oh, I want sun, luxury, freedom, freedom. Miami awaits me. No, oh, let's your count. I'd see that." I sat down slowly. Wow. His heart was beating so hard that he seemed to want to jump out of his chest. But my eyes were dry. There. Ow. For the first time in a long time. I didn't cry because it was no longer a surprise. It was confirmation. Ashley never loved my son. I never wanted a family. She used the house, the name, the documents, and now she planned to walk out the front door as if she owned everything. And him? Ethan? He remained on the couch, one candle, or thinking he was loved. I nabbed them tight for your car. Shout. Protected. Well, necessary. Little did he know that it was just another item in the inventory. And I watched everything as if watching a play for the 100th time. The difference is that this time, well, I had the script in my hands. I finished the cake. I took it to the table. Ashley walked into the kitchen with her phone still in her hand, smiled. Malia, what's it, Cassie? Cake? What a delight. Carol? I smiled too. To celebrate, I replied. No, Lamb. She looked at me without understanding, but he didn't ask. And that was more revealing than any words. Because those who are to blame, he is afraid of detail. I kept the audio. I sent it to Elias. On the same day, must do us account. He followed me so. Carol, now you have everything. Are you ready to start? And I said, how? Not yet, because I wanted to wait for the right moment. The moment that would hurt, that would mark, that would show, once and for all, that behind my silence there was strategy, and that behind my apparent passivity there was a woman with memory. Wow, thou wast a seer's skies and tests. By the way, if you think you've heard it all, stay with me until the end, because what happened after that, it was not just justice. It was also liberation. And it was there, at this point in the story, that the Carol they thought they had buried came back to the fore. But before any confrontation, I needed to see with my own eyes what she planned to do with my grandson, Woody. And what I discovered, made me make the hardest decision of my life. I took all the briefcases to Elias' office on a cold November morning. He would wait for me with 2 cups of coffee, like in the old days when I would bring him apple pies at the bakery. We spread the material on the table. Recordings, photos, copies of contracts, bank statements, printed emails, even screenshots of the messages Ashley exchanged with her mother. Mocking me. Elijah, read everything in silence. Only the sound of the clock filled the room. When he finished, why, he took a deep breath and said, "Well, Calcorn of zero. I to be so. Carol, you have everything. Absolutely everything. Now, it's a matter of timing." I just nodded. Timing, no, a beautiful word for patience. And I learned to have both. On the way home, winding down, the icy wind from Portland cut my face. But inside me, something burned. I knew the time was near. And when I got home and opened my phone, it was as if the universe had given me the signal I was waiting for. There she was, Ashley, posting a photo on Instagram. The three of them were there. Her, Ethan, and her mother, sitting in my living room, while Tom, up and she, on my couch, with my rug in the background. The same rug I bought at a church auction when I was still counting coins to raise my son. In the caption, a short sentence, "The family that really matters." My whole body froze. For a moment, I stared at the screen without blinking. The cake I had baked that morning was still cooling on the countertop. The sweet smell seemed to mock me, as if it reminded me of the times when everything tasted like home. I picked up my phone and typed just 2 words. "Good luck." I clicked send. No, the finger trembled, but the heart was firm. And almost was firm. Soon after, they said down. I sent a message to Elias. "Execute," he replied, with a simple understood. And in that second, justice began to move silently, like an underground river that has been flowing for years under the earth, until the day it breaks everything. I sat in the armchair and stared at the clock on the wall. The ticking sounded different. It was the sound of those who hope for the inevitable. I thought about everything I had experienced. The first day, Ashley walked through my door with that sweet perfume and calculated look. At the first dinner, in the first cutting words, on how Ethan changed his voice when he started calling her my love and me, Mom, please, in every humiliation swallowed, in every plate washed with tears, and suddenly it all made sense. Everything had a purpose. Each offense became evidence. Each silence became a document. That's when I found myself thinking, how powerful some memories are, aren't they? How they don't disappear. They become lessons, fuel, courage. And if you who are listening to me now also have any memories that changed your life, share it with me in the comments. It can be something simple, a phrase, a moment, a memory that still pulsates inside. Sometimes, sharing what was left in the heart is the first step to free yourself from it. I looked at her photo again, still on my cell phone screen. Widowed Todd, hush. Ashley's smile seemed victorious, almost provocative, but she had no idea what was about to happen. Because, while she was showing off the family that mattered, lawyers were already sending out requests for the annulment of property transfers, bank locates, and formal notices. And all of this would be delivered to Ethan in a matter of hours. Fate had a curious habit of presenting itself in the form of irony, and that afternoon, irony was perfect. I closed my cell phone and leaned my head against the back of the chair. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Strange, calm, kind, dangerous peace. That peace that comes before the storm. I knew that from then on, nothing would be the same as before, and that when the phone rang, well, it would be the sound of the fall. But what I didn't know, the first to call would not be the lawyer. It would be Ethan. And what he said, everything changed. The phone rang, and I knew, even before answering, that the waiting time was over. Ethan's voice came trembling, almost in despair. Mom, what did you do? The bank blocked our accounts. The lawyer said he has a court order. Documents annulled. One. Notifications arriving. What's going on? For a second, no. It made me want to cry, not out of guilt, but out of pity, because he still didn't understand what was really going on. I took a deep breath and just said, "Come home, home. Ethan, we need to talk in person." He arrived less than half an hour later, his face pale, his eyes reddened. No. His breath short. She entered without greeting, dropped the keys on the table and repeated, "Wow. Mom, what did you do?" I was sitting in the same chair where I sewed his first school uniform. On the table, we identified. I calmly placed the folders. I opened them one by one. Sit down, myself. Ethan, it's time for you to listen. He obeyed. She shall see, half without knowing why. I took the first pen drive and plugged it into the computer. I pressed play. Ashley's voice filled the room. Sharp, cold. As soon as I managed to transfer the last 2 papers to my name, I will file for divorce. Ethan's breath froze. Michael is insecure, accommodating, no, but it served what I needed. He turned white. He looked at me, then at the screen, in disbelief. I didn't say anything. I just put the second file. The old woman doesn't even suspect it. When the time comes, everything will be in our name. His hands began to tremble. Mom, what is it? This is not. Can't. But it was. And he knew. I took the photos I took from the document folder in the garage. I showed the copy of the mortgage, the loan, the movements of the joint account. No. I said it out loud, but then it shows to count. Look at the names. Ethan, no. Do you recognize the signatures? Do you recognize the dates? He ran his hand over his face, not knowing whether to cry or scream. But, Lee, she said it was for the baby. Mom, that it was for our future. I interrupted him calmly. For her future, Ethan, not yours. That's when we heard the sound of footsteps upstairs. Ashley went down the stairs slowly, already knowing what awaited her. She was pale, her hair tied up in a hurry, her face expressionless. He looked at me and then at Ethan, trying to understand what he already knew. What's going on here? He asked, forcing a sweet tone. Nad Han. Ethan turned to her, his eyes teary. What's this? Ashley, what did you do? She gave a nervous half laugh. I can't believe you're listening to your mother. She is confused. Ethan is recording me. Now, Leidstad, Ochentabel, Anes Akdasht, chasing me. Now, hating me for no reason. He got up from his chair and shouted, No. Then say it's a lie. She hesitated. Oh, and that second of silence was the clearest confession in the world. Wow. She tried to get closer, touch his face. Baby, and Enchawokar, Dibdimo, was sent to my next diet, a kitchen. You know I love you. I was stressed. I talked nonsense. Ethan walked away. Did you use my mother's house to take out a loan? Were you going to sell everything? Ashley tried to cry, tried to dramatize. I was thinking about us. You never wanted to grow up. Ethan, I just wanted to give our son a better life. And that's when he shouted, ah, in a tone I'd never heard come out of him. You never wanted any family. Ashley, I wanted what she had. I remained seated, whoa, just watching. What I had waited for years was happening before me, not as revenge, but as truth, because the truth, when it arrives, does not need applause. It just needs to be said. Ashley, realizing that she no longer had control, turned to me. You planned everything, didn't you? You wanted to destroy me. I took a deep breath. No, Ashley, you did it yourself. I just recorded the sound. She took a step forward, on, her face in fury. But Ethan held her down. As enough. It's over now. The silence that came after seemed solid. One could hear the sound of the wind hitting the window, the clock ticking the seconds. I looked at him, how so calm, as lost as a child. Mom, what have I done? She asked in a thin voice. And I, with a heavy heart, replied, You trusted those who called you love, and he doubted who called you son. Ashley took out her phone, called someone, spoke fast, desperate. In a few minutes, she went up to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and walked out the door, hitting her heels on the floor, as if she still had control of something. Ethan sat there, not knowing what to do with his bare hands. I got up slowly, put a cup of coffee in front of him, and said, Now, we start again, only this time, with my eyes open. But what I didn't even know at that moment, it's just that Ashley's hasty exit wasn't the end. It was just her first attempt to save what she still could, and what she tried to do in the following days. It almost ended me for good. She returned the next day, like a shadow that refuses to disappear. He arrived screaming, clapping at the gate, demanding to get in. Ethan, still with his face haggard from the night before, hesitated. No, us someday. But I was the one who opened the door. Ashley thrust in the air, dressed in anger and pride. This house is mine too, she said. Ah, her eyes sparkling. Nice wife. I'm not going anywhere without a fight. I didn't answer. No, I just looked at the clock on the wall, as if knowing that time will solve what words don't need. Ethan tried to argue, tried to appease, but she couldn't listen anymore. He walked around the room, pointing out the furniture, the walls, the floor. All of this is half mine. Do you think you're going to get me out of here with a little court order? And it was at that exact moment that the doorbell rang. Elias entered, no, serene as always, accompanied by a bailiff. Their footsteps echoed steadily down the hallway. Ashley turned pale. "What is this?" he asked, trying to disguise the fear in his voice. Elias opened the briefcase, took out the papers, and spoke calmly but firmly. This is how Ashley Coleman, my humiliation. By court order, all assets have reverted to the original name of Carol Sanders. Properties, accounts, records, and contracts that were under misuse were returned. The debts and loans are now under his responsibility. She laughed nervously. This is absurd. I'm going to sue you. Elijah interrupted her with a simple gesture. You have an hour to leave. For a few seconds, no one moved. The clock ticked, and every sound sounded like a reminder that her empire of lies was crumbling. Then, suddenly, it exploded. How? He went up the stairs, screaming, slamming doors, knocking over paintings, breaking vases. The noise was deafening. Ethan stood helplessly, and I just sat in the armchair, because I knew that this kind of rage is the last stage of losing control. It is desperation trying to transform itself into power. When she came downstairs, her suitcases dragged, her hair disheveled, now, her face stained with mascara, and her eyes full of hatred. He stopped in front of me, taking a deep breath, and for a moment I thought he was going to say something, but he didn't. He just looked, that look that tries to hurt without needing a word, and turned his back. Elijah followed her to the door, while the officer watched in silence. She tripped on the carpet at the entrance, cursed softly, and left. The wheels of the suitcases scraped the cement of the sidewalk like a last scream. The door closed, slowly. The noise was dry, definite. It sounded like the sound of the wind when it stops blowing after a storm. Ethan collapsed in his chair and put his hands on his face. Mom, what did we do? I touched his shoulder. None. What we should have done from the beginning. Saying enough is enough. I stood there, staring into the emptiness of the room. Each thing in place, but everything different. There was no celebration, no relief, just a deep silence, one of those that the soul needs to reorganize itself. But deep down, I knew that woman would not accept defeat like that. Ashley wasn't the type to say goodbye. No, he was the type to take revenge. And when she turned the corner, dragging the bags, something in my chest warned me. It wasn't over yet. Because what comes after the fall? It's the counterattack. And sometimes the final blow is not the highest. It is the quietest. In the days that followed, the house seemed to breathe differently. The air was light, no, but there was a kind of peace that wasn't rest. It was reconstruction. I spent my mornings sweeping the porch, watering the flowers, trying to figure out what was left of me after all. Ethan tried to compose himself too. Embarrassed, lost, but present now. The pain that remained between us was no longer resentment. It was learning. But outside, in some corner of the city, why? Ashley still breathed hatred. And when a woman driven by ambition loses her stage, what she does is get another one. And it was on social networks that she tried to set up hers. They started to warn me through the messages, posts with vague phrases, captions full of poison, and indirect with well-chosen words. The worst pain is being betrayed by those who should protect you. Toxic mothers-in-law destroy families. Not everything that shines is true love. At first, I just read it and let it go. But within days, the comments began to turn against her. Neighbors, old customers of the bakery, even people from the church where I used to donate bread on Sundays, began to respond in the publications. We know the true story. Carol has always been an honest woman. You should be ashamed. Her digital castle began to crumble, stone by stone. Why? Pixel by pixel. Why? I knew the answer. Elias called me one of those days. He said that Ashley's mother, a woman of impeccable posture, owner of an expensive beauty salon in downtown Portland, had been named in the recordings, in the audios. Ashley laughingly told how her mother told her to act sweetly to get what she wanted. That part was leaked. And when her mother's name started to come up in conversations, her reputation sank with it. My important customers canceled appointments. Local journalists began to investigate the deals. The irony was cruel. Two women who lived on appearances. They lost everything because of a broken mirror, the mirror of truth. Ashley still tried to hit me in other ways. She sent long messages to Ethan, saying she was a victim. When you're not, I'll shy. Saying that I hated her from day one. That I made everything up. That I manipulated the lawyer. But Ethan, for the first time, did not respond. He just forwarded everything to me in silence. And this silence of his, it was the confession I needed. He had understood. A month later, I'd been month later, she received the first collection notifications. The loans, the debts, the late fees. Everything was now in her name. The luxury car was seized. The house she rented, in her mother's name, was the target of a seizure. Now, she began to disappear from the places she used to frequent. No one invited her to events anymore. Her friends, the same ones who once praised her elegance, now avoided even liking her photos. It was the beginning of the dismantling, slow, public, and inevitable. There was a day when I went to the market and found it by chance. In the parking lot. He was wearing sweatshirts, sunglasses, badly tied hair. When he saw me, he stopped for a second. Her eyes were angry, but also ashamed. I just walked past her and said quietly, "Oh, good luck." The same words, the ones that started it all. The one steady, a cat cocktail. I didn't contemplating. And it was there, watching it crumble, that I realized I didn't have to win anymore. I had already won. There are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and subscribe. And let's make this story reach those who need to hear that time always does justice. Because time, time is the most patient judge there is. After that meeting, I thought it was all over. Down. That the chapter was closed. But life sometimes holds one last twist to test if we have really learned to stand up. Because a week later, Elias called me again. His voice was different, tense, and down. "Carol, lighter than hell. You need to come to the office. Now, now." I asked him what had happened, and he replied slowly, "It's about the baby." And it was at that moment, that the ground seemed to open again under my feet. When I returned home after Elias' call, I found Ethan sitting on the porch, his gaze lost on the horizon. The lawyer had explained everything to me. Ashley had run away, but left behind a jumble of documents and lies, including about the pregnancy. The baby, which she used as a shield for so long, never existed. It was another of his inventions to hold my son emotionally and maintain the theater of marriage. When I told Ethan, he broke down. He cried like when he was little, when he fell and hurt his knee. Only now the wound was inside, and I couldn't put any bandage on it. I just sat next to him, saying nothing. How? Sometimes silence is the only possible embrace. In the following weeks, the house became different. I changed the locks, swept every corner, removed the pictures she had placed, even cleaned the cabinets with vinegar and soap, Mom, as I did in the old days. It felt like I was exorcising her presence, taking the weight off the walls. Ethan helped me, silently. He cleaned the yard, not aisle wipes, changed light bulbs, painted the doors. I never said, "Forgive me," well, but every small gesture was a request that I listened to without needing words. One day, I woke up and the smell of coffee already took over the house. It was him, preparing the same coffee I made when he was a boy. I felt my chest tighten, not of sadness, but of tenderness. Time does not erase the pain, but it gives us the chance to reorganize love. The later now one, which had previously looked gray, began to bloom again. I planted lavenders, daisies, and new rose bushes. Ethan bought seedlings and helped me plant. Sometimes we would sit there, saying nothing, watching the bees dance among the flowers. It was as if each new plant that sprouted gave back a piece of our history that it had tried to uproot. And for the first time in a long time, I heard the sound of my son's laughter again. Low, shy, but real. Sometimes at night he would ask me, Mom, will you ever be able to forgive me? I took a long time to answer. I looked at him and said, Well, son, forgiveness is not a word. It's time. And he understood. Now I see ya. Because a mother's love is not extinguished with disappointment. He falls asleep, bleeds, but waits, and one day, without realizing it, he wakes up again. I rearranged the house like someone who sews an old quilt. Each corner gained a new meaning. The room, and the seal hands, Adaneshi, which was once a scene of humiliation, has become a place of peace. The room I am, which was previously occupied by false voices, has become a refuge again. And the kitchen smelled of fresh bread again. I felt alive again. And this time, whole. There's a phrase that came to my heart while watering the garden. Some destructions are blessings in disguise. And that's why I ask you, stay with me until the end of this story, because the most memorable moment is yet to come. You will understand that even loss can be the beginning of a new kind of strength. One morning, while I was watering the flowers, Ethan arrived with a box in his hands. For you, Mom. Inside, no, there was a wooden frame with an old photo of us, taken in front of the bakery years ago. One day, he had restored the image, clean edges, due, and put a dedication, to the love that never gave up on me. I touched the glass and felt the tears fall shamelessly. There, I understood that forgiveness was already happening, even if in silence. But life, with its mysterious way, had not yet finished testing me, because when the phone rang again, and I heard Elias' voice, I realized that, even with everything resolved, there was a shadow of the past that insisted on coming back. Carol, indeed, he said, Mom, we need to talk. It's not about Ashley. It's about something she left behind. No. And I felt, deep down, that peace that I had worked so hard to build was about to be put to the test. A few months had passed since that call from Elijah, and life had already resumed the quiet pace that I dreamed of so much. The garden was blooming. Ethan had smiled again, and even the neighbors stopped whispering around the corners. It was as if, at last, the dust of war had settled. But on a cold October morning, I found something unexpected in the mailbox. A beige envelope, addressed to me in a handwriting that I recognized on the spot. The elongated letters, the careful curves, they were hers. Ashley, For a moment, I thought about tearing it right there, throwing it away, letting the wind carry it, or but something in me wanted to see what was left of that woman after the collapse. I took the envelope to the kitchen, prepared a strong coffee, and sat at the table. The paper smelled of cheap perfume mixed with regret. I opened it slowly. and the words began to fall from those lines as if collapsing after a long time, pretending firmness. Dear Carol, ni mashtan, wish kateriye. Well, I don't know if you're going to read it, but I needed to write. I lost everything. Lani, Lanyan, the friends, the house, the respect, Iml, with a cousin in Sacramento, sleeping on a borrowed couch. Sometimes I think about what I did and I can't believe it was me. The woman I became was a stranger. I wanted to ask for forgiveness, not for what happened, because I know there is no going back, but for having been so blind, so arrogant, no, so small. There, Gustavo. I continued reading, and the tone shifted between regret and justification. She said that she grew up in a home where love was synonymous with appearance, that she never learned to get attached without manipulating. Wow. That she saw people as stepping stones. I thought that controlling was loving, that winning was to be admired, and I ended up alone, defeated, remembering a woman I humiliated, and who, even so, won without screaming. You. I understand everything now. Tears flowed down the paper. There were smudges, erased letters, marks of those who cried while writing. They say that time heals, but time also charges. Carol, cow. And he charged me with interest. I don't want anything from you. I just needed to say that. I regret it. It closed with a simple, Mihang, almost childish sentence. I hope that one day you will find enough peace to forgive me. I stared at those words for long minutes. The clock on the wall made the same sound, as always. The coffee cooled, and I felt a strange mixture. Not anger, not pity, not. It was something deeper, like someone who sees the end of a cycle and realizes that, no matter how much pain there has been, oh, everything has already fulfilled its role. Folding the letter, my own hand, I realized that compassion needs no response. Sometimes, forgiveness is a silence that spares the other and saves us. I kept the letter inside an old book that was on the shelf, Wuthering Heights. I thought it was symbolic, because in that story there are also unhealthy passions, pride, punishment, and a new beginning. Oh. I closed the book carefully and went back to taking care of the flowers. The afternoon sun beat down on the leaves, and the wind rumbled through the trees. For the first time, I no longer felt angry when I remembered her, nor pity, nor courtesy, just distance. A distance that doesn't hurt, it only protects. Days later, I received an email from Elias with the subject closure of the case. I opened it, and there was the confirmation. All the processes closed. Near Nadwood City Card. Was it here at amount? Debt settled. No. Now. Properties regularized. He wrote, wellness. Justice done. Carol. But, more than that, dignity restored. Smile. Because, yes, the justice I wanted was no longer from the court. It was from the heart. I had recovered what mattered most, the peace of existing without fear, without having to prove anything to anyone. At the end of that week, I sat in the garden with Ethan. He brought 2 coffees and placed one of the glasses in front of me. Mother, he said, "I'm my thanks. Do you know what impresses me most about all this? You won without having to destroy. You just waited and let the truth do the work." I looked at him and replied, "Und wieder, son, one. Time then does what anger never can." The sun began to set, tinting the sky orange. I looked at the horizon and thought that maybe in Sacramento, I did only chairs out, literally. A woman was reading a borrowed book and trying to rebuild her own life. Maybe she would never write to me again. Perhaps we would never cross the same path again. And that's okay. Some stories don't need continuation. They need an end. But fate has a curious way of testing if our hearts are really at peace. Because 2 weeks later, the phone rang again, and the voice on the other end made me freeze. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, a voice that carried another story I thought I had left behind. "Hello, Carol. This is Susan. We need to talk. It's about Ashley." When I heard Susan's voice on the other end of the line, the world seemed to stop for a moment. It had been years since I had heard that arrogant, calculated tone, when I am, which was always accompanied by some kind of manipulation, disguised as courtesy. But this time there was something different. Her voice trembled. "Carol, it's about Ashley," he repeated. Now, I sat down. Why? How sit down? Clutching the phone between my fingers. She said that her daughter was admitted to a hospital in Sacramento after a suicide attempt. She had been found unconscious, surrounded by pills and notes scattered on the table. The body had survived, but the spirit, she said, I am not concerned. Our young child was too tired to continue fighting. I was silent. I didn't wish Ashley harm. I never did. Not how. He just wanted justice. But there, wow. Listening to that, I realized how much her fall had gone too deep. Susan asked me to visit her. She said that her daughter kept repeating my name in the hospital, as if she needed some kind of absolution. I refused at the time. He said that some wounds are not healed with late visits, but I spent the rest of the day thinking her face, even with all the falsehood, was still that of a girl lost at some point in her life. Oh. At night, I sat on the porch and looked up at the Portland sky, the same sky she once looked at with me at Sunday dinner time. I thought about how cruel and wise time is at the same time. It takes what is useless, but it also gives back what we need to see. The next day, I told Ethan. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Mom, maybe you should go. Not for her, but for you." Those words echoed in me. I knew he was right. Sometimes we need to end the cycle by looking into the eyes of pain. That's how. A week later, I traveled to Sacramento. The hospital was simple, surrounded by trees, and with a smell of disinfectant and melancholy. I entered her room with a heavy heart. Ashley was thin, pale, consumed, almost unrecognizable. When he saw me, His eyes filled with tears. "You came?" she whispered. Ah, I didn't know what to say. I just sat next to her. We were silent for a few minutes until she spoke in a weak voice. I thought forgiveness was something we asked for, but I understood that sometimes it is what we offer ourselves. I never forgave myself. Carol, and Dalton, neither for what I did to you, nor for what I did to Ethan. I took a deep breath and, for the first time, touched her hand. It was a cold hand, without strength, but human. "Ashley," I said, "you have to live long enough to truly forgive yourself, and never again confuse love with possession." She cried softly, "My Andeotiha." And at that moment, I realized that the justice I sought so much was not in the signed papers, nor in the judicial victories. It was there, in that meeting of two broken women, united by different mistakes, but by the same need to move on. I returned to Portland 2 days later. The sun seemed warmer, the air lighter. When I got home, the world, Ethan was waiting for me with a bouquet of flowers from the garden. "To welcome you back, Mom." I felt a lump in my throat. That simple gesture was worth more than any apology. It was proof that time was remaking what pride had destroyed. We went back to our routine. I cooked in the morning. He worked on the computer in the afternoon, and in the evening, we had dinner together on the porch, talking about small things. How nice it was to go back to having just the simple. One day, he arrived with news. He had landed a new job on a sustainable technology project and wanted to invest part of his salary in a small property in North Portland. I want to do it my way now. Mom, but I learned that home is more than a place. It's who we have inside it. I smiled, no, feeling the pride mingle with a certain relief. He was finally understanding the value of patient construction, of what does not come easy. On Sundays, he still came to lunch with me. The house now smelled of real food and the sound of sincere laughter. No luxury. No appearances, just memory, respect, and freedom. I went back to cooking for pleasure, and he went back to praising him as he did when he was a boy. Sometimes I caught him looking at me with a kind of silent tenderness, as if trying to measure the size of what he almost lost. Time. Time is a wise gardener. He pulls out what is rotten, prunes what needs to grow, and makes even what seemed dead flourish. Today, looking at everything I have experienced, I realize that I did not win by shouting, nor fighting with hatred. I won waiting, watching, and acting at the right time. The revenge I planned turned into redemption, and the love I thought I had lost was reborn. Stronger, higher, more mature, more real. But, you know, life always has one last surprise. Because one morning, the postman knocked on the door with a manila envelope. He came from the same hospital in Sacramento. The sender, Ashley Caldwell Handel. Inside, a single sheet and a few words that, when I read it, completely changed the way I saw everything that happened. Inside the envelope was only one sheet of paper, and in the center, online, written in firm letters, I would intend you God part. The same hands that once trembled with anger and fear. Well, thank you for teaching me what it is to lose everything. Only then did I learn what it is to value something. Good luck, Carol. Meanwhile, 2 words, the same ones that ended the war years ago. But this time, they sounded different. It was not irony, nor challenge. It was surrender. It was recognition. I folded the paper carefully and put it in the same drawer where the old photos rested, next to the wedding ring and a note Ethan wrote me as a child. I closed the drawer and felt, for the first time, that the cycle was complete. I never heard from her again. I heard that he went to work in a small design studio and that he started going to therapy. I just hope you found what you were looking for so much. Peace. Susan? Oh, her mother, Sarah Nordisil, ha, never, sold the salons, moved to Arizona, and, from what I'm told, Niwa, a debtor in your class, now lives quietly. As for Ethan, my son, he started a small sustainable technology company with some friends. Okay, serene. Ow, Sivkala, what he's touchdown. On Sundays, he still comes to lunch with me. Now, he is the one who cuts the flowers in the garden and prepares the coffee. The house, which was once the scene of humiliation and pain, is now the quietest and most beautiful home I could have. At every sunset, I sit on the porch, look up at the sky, and think about everything I've experienced. I understand, no, I understand, finally, that it was not revenge that moved me, but the need to see myself whole. Life has taught me that dignity doesn't scream. It whispers, and that sometimes silence is the biggest cry of all. I learned that love is not measured by how much we endure, but by the moment we decide to stop letting ourselves be hurt. I also learned that time has a strange way of correcting the world. Slow, patient, getting down on the patient, but infallible. Time does not rush. It waits for the truth to reveal itself, and when it appears, nothing can hide it. So, if someone on the other side has experienced something similar, well, God, if they have swallowed tears so as not to lose the one they love, remember, well, love never justifies disrespect. Sometimes to love is also to get up. Today, I live alone, not so, but not alone. I have my books, wow, my garden, and the smell of warm bread around the house. I have friends who stop by for coffee, neighbors who knock on the gate with fresh flowers, and every once in a while, a letter from Ethan telling me how proud he is of me. And that's enough, because I understood that freedom is not the absence of ties. It is having the right ties. If you have stayed with me so far, thank you from the heart. Telling this story was like opening an old wound to show that it can heal. And if somehow she touched you, give me a hug in the form of a like. It warms up and makes the channel stay alive. And if you want to come back for another coffee, and more stories like this. Sign up there. Not tell me in the comments which city you are listening to me. I want to meet those who walk with me through these memories. And it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose. When the coffee is brewed again, I continue here, taking care of my flowers and writing new stories. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that every wrinkle I carry is not a mark of pain. It's a reminder of resistance. So, if someone asks me how everything has changed, I just smile and answer, Wu Kanidang, I stay tower daughter, with 2 words. Good luck, because whoever tried to erase me, he already knows who he messed with. I didn't have to beat anyone. I just had to find myself. Don't go away yet. Undiatao, and Stotino Kapatiat. Akamoined it is soon. Listen to the next real story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, where Habuland. Each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.